water year begins on October 1st of every year as new snow begins to fall high in the mountains. It collects during the following months, reaching peak snowpack in mid-April. In the Arkansas River Basin, it comes rushing off the mountains during May and June as temperatures warm. 70% of our water comes from the annual snowpack collected during the fall, winter, and spring months. In wet years, the flow of water in the Arkansas River can be overwhelming. In dry years, the lack of water can be devastating. In fortunate times, the amount of water seems just right, at least in terms of meeting the human needs for sustaining the population, food supply and recreation, and for maintaining the environmental balance tied to the river's ecosystem. Without the imprint of the Frying Pan Arkansas project, the water it adds, the storage it provides, and the corresponding control of river flows, the Arkansas Valley would be at the mercy of the elements as these cycles play out year after year. Bill Tyner, Division II engineer for the Colorado Division of Water Resources, and Roy Vaughn, retired manager of the Frying Pan Arkansas project for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, met at Pueblo Dam to discuss the benefits the Frying Pan Arkansas project holds for the Arkansas River Basin.
In the Arkansas Basin, the hydrology is such that our water supply can come down the river in a manner that is difficult to take advantage of without storage. The ability to time the delivery of water, especially for irrigation uses, but also for municipal and other uses, is pretty critical to this basin because we have the lowest amount of natural stream flow in any division in the state. And when we get it, we sometimes get it in very large amounts in a very short time frame. And that can be both in how snowmelt runoff occurs, if it comes off rapidly, and our tendency to get large summer storms that can be very advantageous for the basin, but are enhanced by the ability to store that water under our pre-compact water rights and be able to use them for the benefit of the basin.
Well, the project imports water from the West Slope, as everyone knows. Our average imports are about 56,000. People don't understand, and I think through education now that they do, is that's a small part of the flow that goes down the Arkansas. We don't manage all the flow. It's about 10% of it. So we can utilize a lot of our storage and supplement things, especially in an average year.
But not every year is average, and the FryArk project levels out the pain of the dry years and the plenty of the wet ones.
That water that is stored in Pueblo and the off-channel reservoirs down the river and in John Martin become critical sources of supply in the following year.
So in a dry year, it's no surprise everybody's looking for water. I think one of the biggest benefits of the project, and especially Pueblo Reservoir, as it's the terminal storage facility for the project, is it allows the municipalities to build up a reserve of water and carry it over from year to year in wet years. It allows them ability to get through some of the dry years. And the winter water storage program as well is a huge benefit to the ag community, because that water that normally was put on the ground in the wintertime can now be used late in the summer to finish off crops.
In a more average year, the flows that are administered down the river from Pueblo all the way to the state line can be able to adapt to changing conditions that happen above Pueblo Reservoir or in the major tributaries that come into the river above John Martin or even below John Martin. And so we can try to maximize the beneficial use in an average year by setting river coals along the river so that where water is available, the ditch companies can take advantage and divert that water.
So in an average year, that's what everybody starts planning for before they even know what the year looks like. So that's what everybody makes their calls on, and their adjustments and their storage and things like that. If it stays average, everybody's in pretty good shape because that's what they plan for. They don't have to make any adjustments, and everybody's pretty well pleased with the outcome because there's enough water to support everything that they plan for. So the challenge in wet years is, I guess, anticipating how much water you have to move. We like to have our forecast done by May 1st, which is the forecast of the snowpack and how much water that's going to yield. So we try to move that by May 1st. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we get late snow. So now we're trying to move water up against high native flows, which creates additional problems. And everybody else, all the other municipal entities on the river that are using the same vessels we do to store are up against the same challenges we are. They're trying to move water against high native flows.
Pueblo Reservoir is kind of the terminal reservoir of the Frying Pan, Arkansas project, but kind of the hub reservoir in the Arkansas basin. When we get to those wet years, excess capacity accounts may begin to get forced out of the reservoir. But as Roy mentioned, those often are opportunities to fill storage someplace else. In addition to Great Plains reservoirs and Adobe Reservoir, where Parks and Wildlife will often try to target some water. Other important storage vessels in the basin, like Trinidad Reservoir, can benefit when there's some excess water in a wet year.
So as far as the flood control goes of the project, Pueblo Dam is the only authorized feature on the project that has a flood control component. And it allows space in the summertime and the early spring where it's 93,000 acre-feet of storage to control flood. This all came out of the early big flood that devastated Pueblo. But the way it works is we have to have that space available in the spring and the summertime. We can push up into that space in the wintertime, but it has to be evacuated in the early spring and summer. And so the trigger for flood control on Pueblo is 6,000 at the Avondale gauge.
Storage enhanced by the Fry Ark project allows the management of flows in the Arkansas River between reservoirs. The Voluntary Flow Management Program on the Upper Arkansas River and the Pueblo Flow Program below Pueblo Dam are possible only because releases can be optimally timed.
Well, I think the original concept of the Voluntary Flow Management Program was to help the fishery in real low water years. That was the emphasis, 250 CFS year round. And I think there was some, well, I don't think, I know there was some different points of view on all that. The fishermen and the Division of Wildlife at that time liked low flows. I mean, that benefited the fishery more than anything. But on the other side, you got you got state parks and the rafters who like high flows. So there was definitely conflict there. There was some meetings earlier that were held that were very contentious, but I think through education and through time, some of those things have changed, some of those views, and I think it's a very successful program.
I think over my career, I've seen the fishery below Pueblo Reservoir develop into quite an excellent fishery. Low flow years, drought years are a challenge there, but through various agreements to try to sustain flows through Pueblo, that fishery's really become a desirable area for fishermen to recreate on. But in those low flow years where we just don't have much native water to pass through Pueblo, any of the supplemental water from the project, whether it be project water or winter water that can be released down through that stretch, helps sustain that gold medal fishery.
I'll talk a little bit about exchanges in low river conditions. There's very limited exchange potential against the native inflow. as well as project exchanges aren't available because there's just no supply of water for those exchanges. So that really makes it difficult for the municipalities to be able to deliver their water to their pumping plants, that being by exchange.
The FryArk project has provided the framework for the collaborative discussion of how to manage flows in the Arkansas River for the last 60 years. And through the process, the Valley has grown to find a common platform for settling water disputes.
There is a lot of cooperation that occurs in the Arkansas Basin. There can be big fights that occur, but there's a lot of cooperation. And Roy and I've talked about that a fair amount, how it's surprising how you can bring parties together when it comes to preserving the limited water that we have.
I could remember some of my early meetings with some concerned groups, and I was surprised at the lack of awareness or education or understanding that they had of Colorado water rights and the way things have to be administered. So they thought you just fill up a reservoir and then you release it whenever you want to. And I think the reason people are cooperating more is because of education, their understanding, and their interest in the way everything interacts and how important it is in managing resources and helping each other, especially when you have different concerns and different interests.
I think it's survival. During the time that the Pueblo Reservoir and the project's been completed, we've gone through an interstate lawsuit with Kansas that took years to complete, and focused a lot of attention on Pueblo Reservoir and the winter water storage program in that court case. But it also caused the interest in the basin to pull together, and this couple of decades of pretty frequent drought periods, I think, has tended to bring people closer together to cooperate rather than fighting over limited supplies of water.